We are in Proverbs chapter 14, and we're in verse 12, and we need to spend a little time in this. This is Proverbs 14 and verse 12. This is a direct repeat with nothing changed whatsoever. It's verbatim of Proverbs 12:15. And it's repeating the same thing. And one would ask, and we've talked about this already in general. One may ask, why would you repeat something verbatim? Now, I understand repeating a same lesson, but different language, different sentence. But this is identical, word for word. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Why would you do that? And I think there is a very good reason for doing it. Not that it was a mistake. It shouldn't have been put in twice. But I think it's by design that it's put in twice. And that is that it is to be considered and remembered. And truly it is. That everybody can have something that they believe is right. They are certain it's right. It can't be wrong. Everybody knows it's right. Everybody thinks it's right. We make jokes about anyone who thinks it's not right. And yet, it isn't right. And it leads to death. It's that serious. It leads to death. Now, the first one that comes to mind, 2 Samuel chapter 6 and verse 7, and that's Uzzah. And we talk about Uzzah every now and then. And Uzzah is a part of David's plan to move the ark. He wants to move the ark to Jerusalem. Is there anything wrong with that? No. Is there anything wrong with moving the ark? No. You can move the ark, you can move it to Jerusalem, because he is making plans for there to be a temple in Jerusalem. He's making the plans for it. He's working toward that direction. God is not going to allow him to build it. It's Solomon, the writer of Proverbs, that's going to build it. But David, he doesn't say David can't plan for it. And he doesn't say David can't be collecting things and helping Solomon as much as he can before he dies. It doesn't say that. But he is wanting to take the ark from where it has been for a while. And he's going to take it to Jerusalem. Now, there is a way it was supposed to have been moved. All of the furniture of the tabernacle were to be moved by a particular family of the Levites. And that's the family of Kohath, the descendants of Kohath. They are Levites. They are not among the priests. You have to be a child of Aaron for that. And Aaron's group, his descendants, those are the priests and the high priests. But Kohath, they're still Levites. They're very much Levites. But the Kohaths are the ones that after the priests have covered everything up and made ready to move, the Kohathites come in and they move it. They are the ones that move it, including the ark. The priests did not do that. It was the Kohathites that did that. But David ignores all that. And it could be in his mind that was a thing of long ago. That's when it was traveling around in the wilderness, in the tabernacle. That's how it was done then, but that's not how it always has to be done. And he's going to find out, no, there's a right way to do it all the time. And it seems right. It seems like there is no problem. We're just going to put this thing on an ox cart. We're going to take it to Jerusalem. What could go wrong? What's wrong with this? Well, if it's an ordinary piece of furniture, if it's just an ordinary object, I mean, it would be a matter of opinion. Use an ox cart, use something else. do whatever you feel like you want to do. But when God has made a law about it, then you better consider that law. You better do that, and that there isn't a better way. There is only one right way, and God has specified what the one right way is. But David doesn't look at that, doesn't see that as something that he needs to do. Otherwise, he would have done it that way. And later he would do it that way. But he doesn't do it that way. And there should have been someone among the priests or among the Kohathites who intervene and say, that's not the way to do it. Somebody should have done it. And if they did, we know nothing about it. But as it's being, and everything looks right. What's wrong with taking it to Jerusalem? Nothing. Nothing's wrong about it. That's not forbidden to take it to Jerusalem. Everything looks right, but then something happens, which if the Kohathites had been taking it as prescribed, as it is commanded, with the Ark of the Covenant being completely clothed, we could say, it's covered. If the Kohathites had done it, now one could say, well, that's going to be hard work carrying that thing so many miles, but that's the way it's supposed to be done. Put it on the ark. You put it on an ox cart. All is well until something happens. The ox cart stumbles. The ark is going to topple. It's going to tumble off of the cart, and Uzzah reaches out to stop it. It all looks right. He is doing what he's trying to protect, this precious, holy thing. But it is holy, and he is forbidden like everybody else is forbidden from touching it. A priest, the high priest himself, cannot go up and touch it. No one is allowed to touch it. Nobody. And when he stops it from falling, he dies immediately. The moment he touches it, he dies, and it is the wrath of God on Uzzah. Now, it doesn't matter what his intent was. Was his intent evil? No, I wouldn't assign him evil intent, because it wasn't. It was absolutely good intent. But regardless of your intent, when God says something, He means it. He doesn't care what your intent happens to be. He doesn't care how you color the situation. He doesn't care any of that. If something is forbidden, it is forbidden. No one is allowed to touch it, and He means it. He's not going to allow for certain individuals to touch it under certain situations when He doesn't allow for that. And the language never allowed for that. And you're being presumptive. You're being presumptive that you can do such a thing. And I know there's a fella, when he was little, and he was just a little guy, he was in preschool classes. And he was very much a troublemaker. And one of the things that he would do is he was the most presumptive child I think I have ever seen. He would go and do things that you think, what child would even want to do that? What child would even think about doing that? And there he is over there meddling with something, carrying something, and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? But here God specified concerning this holy object, the Ark of the Covenant, you don't touch it. You do not touch it at all, or there is death in that thing. And I tell you, as someone who is, anyone who has no connection with the Levites, one way or other, just stay as far away from it as you need to. Do not get close to these objects. Stay away from them. If you have the fear of God in you, you stay away. And here is this idea that it seems right. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Nadab dies. Now, it's not just Nadab's fault. Now, he's condemned, and he's dead because of it. But it was David who put him in that situation. David's the one that commanded that it be, or at least approved that this is the way it's going to be done. And he's the one that put Nadab and everybody else in danger. He's the one that did it. David put them, I'm sorry, I don't know what I said.
You're saying
Nadab. Oh, I'm sorry. Put Uzzah, sorry. Nadab and Abihu are my next ones. But who put Uzzah in that situation. David put Uzzah in that situation. Now, since I'm going to gravitate to Nadab and Abihu, Leviticus 10 and 2, what Nadab and Abihu do seems, at least to them, like there's no problem with it. No problem at all. They are about their priestly duties, and they have just, the priesthood has just been established. Their father, Aaron, has just been anointed high priest. They are now anointed priests. They are starting their duties, and among their duties is that of the incense. They are to light the incense. But there is a specific fire God wanted them to light the incense with. A specific fire. But they don't use that fire. They use a different fire that God had not specified for them. They were not to use any other fire. But from a human standpoint, from a human viewpoint, fire is fire is fire. Whether it's your fire or my fire, it's both burning. They both will burn incense. They both are burning wood brilliantly, and other things we may throw in. That's burning it brilliantly. What's the difference? Well, the difference is when God specifies a specific fire, then that makes the difference. And they take a very casual attitude. Now, to us, it may not seem casual at all. It may seem, that's just practicality. But God demands to be respected, and anyone that comes before me must regard me as holy. That's what God says. And they light the incense with a strange fire, as it is sometimes translated, or a foreign fire, as it's sometimes translated, or just it wasn't the fire they were supposed to be using, and God destroys them immediately with fire from heaven. He immediately destroys them. And He gives a message through Moses. Tell Aaron, don't you mourn your sons. Do not make a public spectacle out of this. They are dead because I have killed them, because they did not regard me as holy. This, you are regarding God. They were regarding God as in service to Him as casual, as whatever. You know, whatever we got, that's what we use. Whatever we think, that's what we do. And here is that way that seems right to a man, but the end is the way of death. There is this idea that what they were doing, there was nothing wrong with what they were doing. That was the idea. That was the idea. And we can talk about what Nadab and Abihu did right, because there's a number of things they did do right. They are the sons of Aaron. They have every right to, and they're authorized to do the activities of the priest, the duties of the priest. They are the right lineage, so they can do that. They were anointed priests, so they're not out of their authority. They're doing precisely what they were called to do. They're doing all that. They were doing these things according to the time in which they were supposed to be done. So all that is right. Was there any ill intent with them? I don't think there was any ill intent at all with them. They just did not regard, now He is saying it, God is saying it, they did not regard God as holy and His duties as serious to take every detail that they were supposed to take. So in this, there is a way that seems right to those men, Nadab and Abihu. It seemed right to them, and it was death. To Uzzah, it was death. To Nadab and Abihu, it was death. And it all seemed right. And all of us can be very guilty of that, of thinking something is right, and it is not right at all. Saul of Tarsus thought certain things were right. He said he lived in all good conscience. All good conscience. Because when he was there at the stoning of Stephen, Stephen needed to die. In his conscience, Stephen needed to die. It seemed like the right thing to do. But it wasn't. He's persecuting the church, and Christ says he's persecuting the Christ. Okay. Now, it all seems good. In Proverbs 12 and 15, the fool has said in his the fool is right in his own eyes. All right. Now, I may have made a mistake. I probably did. Proverbs 16:25 is the repeat. Okay, I think I was probably looking at the wrong note down here. Proverbs 16:25 is the repeated verse. This is the first time the verse has been presented, and it's going to be repeated in 16:25. Now, Proverbs 12:15, the fool is right in his own eyes. All right, that's no good. That's no good. The fool is convinced he's right and must be right. And it's very, very difficult to convince someone like that they are wrong. Once, and you've met them, but having a Bible study with a couple, and the husband thoroughly believed that he could speak in tongues and that he could understand other languages miraculously. Well, the fellow who was with me and myself didn't. We didn't believe that for a second, and we know that he couldn't. We know that he couldn't. And if he could do that, why is he in an English-speaking country? All right. Why? Because that's the language he grew up with. Why are you in an English-speaking country? You should be somewhere else where it's a difficult language. You need to be there, and you need to be preaching there. Don't you think? It seems like to me you have a moral obligation to do such a thing. You can't just spend your life in the language you learned as a child. Now, try to convince him that he can't do it. Well, you couldn't. You couldn't convince him. Because he was certain that he could. The fact that he couldn't at that moment only means that something's up with the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit just doesn't allow him to at that moment. But when he needs to, boom, he's able to understand and communicate in other languages. And now how do you convince him that's not the case? You can make him into a fool, which he's made himself into a fool. You can say what you want, but he's standing firm. He's not going to be convinced that he cannot speak in other tongues, that he believes himself to be absolutely right. Now, we come to we're in 14, verse 13. Even in laughter the heart may sorrow, and the end of mirth may be grief. Going from this goes back to those internal emotions, those emotions that we see from verse 10 that can be deep inside, and we don't really comprehend what the emotions of another person or everything going on in whether it's bitterness or whether it's joy inside that person. But here we have this extreme, going from one extreme to another extreme, and it can happen in an instant of going from mirth to grief. And now verse 14, the backslider in heart will be filled with his own ways, but a good man will be satisfied from above. The backslider in heart. Well, backslider in heart is one who's just going to continue in wickedness. A backslider in heart is one that's where they want to be going. Is backsliding. Continuing in wickedness is going to bring the same. It's going to bring more wickedness. The backslider in heart will be filled with his own ways. Yeah, he inherits folly. That's from verse 18. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. Okay? That he's going to be filled with his own ways, and that is more backsliding. That's more wickedness. That's going to be more of what he produces in that backsliding heart. But a good man will be satisfied from above. A good man is going to be satisfied, not from consequences, not from bad actions that he has been doing, because this is a good man. A good man is going to be satisfied from above. It's going to be that confidence of doing right. It's going to be that of not having to look in the mirror on, in quiet moments and see a person you really didn't want to become. But that of being satisfied that you have done good, satisfied that personal peace that you have in fact done right. And the conscience is clear. The conscience judges it as all being right. And yes, God Himself will reward. God Himself will reward that person. Now verse 15. The simple believes every word, but the prudent considers his steps well. All right? The simple believes every word. You have someone who is naive, gullible, someone who is easily convinced, who's careless, heedless, imprudent. This is the simple in all of this, that they believe every word. I was told by someone, is about a third party. He said, do you know how to get that particular man on your side of an argument? And I said, how? He said, you go to him first. You be the first to get to him. Tell him your side of the argument. Tell him how you are right and everybody else is wrong, and he will believe you. And he'll be loyal to that. And regardless of the facts, regardless of any of the facts that come around, he will be loyal to what he was told first. That's because that's the way he is. And you won't convince him otherwise. Somehow the truth is the thing that was presented first, and nothing else coming around is going to matter. Now, the simple believes every word, going to be heedless about it, careless about it, and not really looking very far, not looking anywhere, just believing it completely. But notice, the prudent considers well his steps. So this is associated together. All right? Believing every word means, and bringing in this, considers well his steps. Believing every word means that something is going to be done. That it's not just a matter of hearing a rumor and believing that rumor. It's hearing something, believing it to be true, and acting upon it. acting upon that, of not considering the steps, not considering what the message happened to be, but just by impulse, just going to react on that and not consider anything, not put it to the test beforehand, just jump. But the prudent considers his steps, considers well his steps. So it's verse 8 also. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. All right, the wise, you have the prudent having wisdom and understands his way. You have here that of the prudent considers his steps well. The prudent takes in the what, the why, and also the results of what their actions may do. That in knowing, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is it the correct thing to do? And what could be the results of doing this? What could develop because of it? And it is looking before you leap. And that is simply being prudent. Verse 16. A wise man fears and departs from evil, but a fool rages and is self-confident. Now, a fool rages and is self-confident. You have the simple believes every word, and here, believing every word, we can put these together. The fool rages. And has that confidence in himself. It's overly done in this. He is wise and right in his own eyes. But the wise man fears and departs from evil. What is it that we read? That of when a fool speaks, when you hear something that you know isn't right, that something's wicked about that, you depart from their company. You leave then. You don't toy around with it. You leave then. Someone begins saying something, and you don't want to be taken in by that person. You don't want to be joining them or having been recruited by them or manipulated by them. You get away from them fast. A fool rages and is self-confident. That here is that person that has the hair trigger or they're volatile, and it doesn't take much and they explode. It doesn't take much. And you see them just raging and absolutely certain that they are right to do what they do. And now it's connected to verse 17. A quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intentions is hated. All right, so someone who's quick-tempered, we have words for that. Well, a loose cannon. What is a loose cannon? A loose cannon is someone that can just go into a rage, and you don't know when that might happen. All right, where does that even come from? What does a loose cannon even mean? All right, on ships that had the old ships, the old sailing ships that had the cannons there, the cannons were drawn in until needed, and then they're pulled outward to where the barrels are sticking out of the ship. And they are, as you know, cannons have recoil. And it's powerful recoil. If you're standing behind a cannon, you don't stand behind a cannon. If you're standing behind a cannon and it fires, it could run right over you. All right? And so what they would do on ships is they would be tied down thoroughly to where when they fired, they didn't go anywhere. They didn't go backwards or to the inside of the ship. They didn't. But a loose cannon is one that it wasn't tied down. It was fired, and now it is going to kill men and possibly do a great deal of damage to the ship itself. And that's what a loose cannon means. Here's this quick-tempered man. He's impetuous, impulsive, and we already used the word volatile. Quick-tempered. And, we all have seen quick-tempered people. And I personally have seen like a couple where the man is, he was calm, and now he's beginning to boil, and the wife is there turning the temperature down. And I've seen it. Just turning the temperature down on that man. And it can work. It can work quite well. But if you've got, and this is a different subject, but if you've got someone like a Jezebel, she's not going to turn the temperature down. She's going to crank it up. She's going to, this quick-tempered man is going to be more tempered. Or I should say more angry and more foolish. Now, we come to the second part of that. And a man of wicked intentions is hated. Well, he can't be trusted. All right. If you have if you work in an environment and one of your fellow employees has wicked intentions and somehow trying to climb the ladder or somehow try to destroy your work or make others look foolish, or they've got wicked intentions, well, you're not going to embrace that person as being good. You're not going to trust that person. They can't be trusted at all. And someone who has some kind of wicked intention, some kind of wicked motive about them, well, they're opportunists. They're going to be looking for something, planning something, and you cannot trust them. They will be hated. Now, and it's just a matter of fact. Even the ungodly will hate such a person. They won't want them around. They see them as just running roughshod over everybody for the sake of their own gain. But verse 18, the simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. All right, this goes back to what we were saying in verse 14. The backslider in heart will be filled with his own ways. The simple inherit folly. It's saying the same thing, is that this is all you produce is folly. The simple are going to produce folly. They're going to gravitate to it. They're drawn to it, having no idea what is right. Not having the first clue as to what they ought to be doing. They're just doing. They're doing what's impulsive. They're doing what seems to be right, but it is not right at all. And they inherit the folly, you can think of it this way, or filled with their own ways, and inheriting the folly that they have created. And it's just a vicious loop, is what it is. The one who is simple will do folly. That folly, that's what they got. And they go back and do more, and they've got more of it now. And then they just continue and repeat. And it's nothing but more of the same. And they're just going to be drowning in it, as a matter of fact. That filled with his own ways. But the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The one who shows caution, not impulsive. The one who's showing a little bit of care instead of being careless. Of once again taking in the what should be done, why am I doing it, and the result of doing it. Someone who does that, they're going to find knowledge and they're going to treasure it. And if you treasure it, you keep it. The prudent are crowned with knowledge. And we can't keep heaven out of this. That God is going to give that person more knowledge. That person is going to learn more because they are showing prudence. Verse 19. The evil will bow before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. Okay, so the evil will bow before the good. Yep. How many criminals have stood before a judge? All right, now in this country you don't bow to them, but in essence that's what you're doing. They're handcuffed, they're led in, and they have to stand for the judge like everybody else. And they can't just go into outbursts, or they will be taken out of court, and it is contempt of court, and that's just another thing tacked on. But the evil will bow before the good. Now, we're going to look at it from also in a different direction, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. Here is the fact. Evil never wins. Evil, there is no victory with the evil. There's only short-term, meaningless gains. And I mean meaningless gains. What they think that they have obtained by it is trivial. It is a trifle that's nothing more than that. That they think that they've got something that they've always wanted, but it is temporary. It is only just for the moment, and then it's gone. Then it's gone. Evil never wins. And the wicked at the gates of the righteous. And the wicked eventually learn. And I can only say that maybe, and I can only say this as a maybe in torments you have some learning. And maybe eventually in hell there's some learning. I can only imagine that would be the case. But wickedness gets you into being a loser, is what it does. Now, verse 20. Note, the poor man is hated by his neighbor, but the rich has many friends. Okay. Now, here is a statement of typical human behavior. That's not saying it's right, because it's going to be shown. We're not through. It's going to be corrected, or I should say directed, by the next verse, which is 21, but also verse 31. The poor man is hated even by his own neighbor, but the rich has many friends. We can know this is bad behavior by places like Leviticus 19 and 18. Love your neighbor as yourself. But there's also that of James 2, 1 through 9, and showing partiality. You have a rich man who comes in, and you have a poor man who comes in. To the rich man, you give the honored seat. To the rich man, here, take this place and sit. To the poor man, yeah, you sit here at my footstool, or you take this lower seat, showing a partiality, which should not be. You treat everyone equally. Have you ever known somebody who the only time they ever came to you is when you knew they needed something? When you had something they needed or they wanted, otherwise it'd have nothing to do with you. Didn't care the first thing about you. Well, that is showing a partiality. That as long as I get some kind of advantage out of you, I'll give you the red carpet. All right, you get the red carpet. But if there is nothing I could possibly get from you, you don't have the resources. You're too poor. You're too this or too that. Well, you're not going to be treated very well at all. You'd be doing good to be a second-rate citizen with that person. And but here this is being directed. We're not through yet. The poor man is hated even by his own neighbor, but the rich has many friends. Well, does this teach us that if we want friends, you better be rich? All right? And if you just want to be hated by your neighbors, well, just be poor. Well, no. Verse 21, he who despises his neighbor sins. So if you're the neighbor of the poor man, you are not to despise your neighbor, regardless of their financial standing, regardless of anything about them. You have a love for them regardless of their social status or their class or anything else. But he who has mercy on the poor, happy is he. So the poor man is hated even by his own neighbor. Well, that's wrong. Being hated by his own neighbor, the neighbors are in fact to show him kindness. They are in fact to show mercy on that poor man, to having mercy on them. Happy is he. That's a pronouncement of blessing, by the way. That is basically saying, blessed is he who has mercy on the poor. Now, we can also look at verse 31. He who oppresses the poor reproaches his maker, but he who honors him has mercy on the needy. So oppressing the poor, what is it that under Moses you have where you are to pay your laborers? You cannot withhold the money they are due, that they have earned. You cannot withhold that money. Nor can you say, I'll give it to you later. You are to give it to them when it is due. You give it to them. And he says, you do that, the Lord of Sabaoth hears their cry. You're oppressing them, and he will hear their cry. He's going to do it, and it's a serious matter. So, he who oppresses the poor reproaches his maker. Well, the poor is hated even by his own neighbor. Well, that would be someone who reproaches his own maker. All right, that's no good. That's pretty bad. And now we go to verse 22. Do they not go astray who devise evil, but mercy and truth belong to those who devise good? Do they not go astray who devise evil? Well, that is the plan, actually. To devise evil is to go astray. That the plan is to go astray. And they're thinking nothing but going astray. They're thinking nothing but of the evil. And if it weren't evil, they wouldn't be thinking about it. If it were something good, they would reject it and they would just go right back to the evil. But mercy and truth belong to those who devise good. Here is someone who's planning good works, devising it, planning good works. This is what they are going to do. This is someone who will be showing acts of goodness, acts of compassion, acts that will in fact help someone else other than themselves. It's going to help someone else. And it may be a few, it may be a many. But here it is, mercy and truth belongs to those. Mercy is also shown to the one who shows mercy. Mercy is given to the one who in fact shows it. Mercy and truth belongs to those who devise good. We can put all that together to know that devising good is going to be a merciful thing. It is a merciful thing. Those who devise evil, well, they're not thinking of helping others in the least. Not in the least. It is just nothing but going astray. Okay, we will continue here from verse 23 next week. And thank you, everybody, for being with us.